Good evening. We'll open the meeting for the City of Walker Planning Commission for January 3 of 2024. First item on the agenda is to review the meeting minutes, although in this case, the minutes from our last meeting will be reviewed in the next meeting. So, this is an opportunity for general public comment. If you've got something to say about a non-agenda item, this is an opportunity to step forward, give us your name and address, and share your thoughts with us. No takers? We'll move then into the agenda items. This case is 23-032. It's a public hearing. And I'm going to pass it over to Paula Preby, our planning director, to introduce the project.
Thank you, Chair. So tonight we'll be talking about the Walkerview planned unit development. This is the PASP as was approved back in 2015. There are originally 27 total lots, a mix of commercial and industrial lots. And since that time, much of it has been developed. In my time with you, several of these lots have come in, including one just a few months ago here, previously called C11, for a project for a small industrial facility. And as part of that project coming in and reviewing all of the components and connections, we learned that there was some of the lots, there were easements for utility connections, in this case for stormwater to connect to the pond, but the lines were not in place, just the easements were there available. Some miscommunication between the individual who purchased the property to build the new business and the developer who sold it. And so we're here tonight to try to clarify and solve some of the problems that arose out of this situation. So I don't have a lot to add. It's a little bit more of an engineering thing. I'll kind of lean on Scott and the applicant's representative here. I'm kind of setting the stage, and I will, I guess, let Scott take it from here.
Okay. Scott Connor, city engineer.
Lean away, right? So basically this is to handle a change in how drainage is going to be handled from lots C9 and C11. It's really a pretty simple thing to look at, but it does change the PASP a little bit, and it changes the dynamics of how all these lots fit together. And so it was important enough to get it in front of you as quick as we could. The change is going to impact drainage from lots C9, 11, 13, and I4. We want to make sure, although they're not all going to flow in the same direction, we want to make sure that they've all signed off on this, and it's my understanding that there is a document floating around with some of those signatures on there. So that's a good thing. And then the last thing we'd want to make sure as a condition is that the easements across lots C12, 13, and I4 are all in place to make sure that there's no issue in the future as these lots get sold off. We want to make sure that the drainage is, whether it's in place or not, that's probably between buyer and seller, but to make sure that the path is in place to handle the conveyance. So really a pretty simple request. So my report, or our report, we want to make sure was a condition of any approval that you consider.
Scott, of course we're all going to depend on you. You're comfortable with the plan now? It looks feasible, it looks right.
Yeah, I think the key is, does everybody that has a stake in this agree? And we want to make sure they've signed off and the easements are in place. But if they are, then that's fine.
Is there it sounds like one thing is to work it out so that there's easements in place, but isn't there another one in terms of the timing, if depending on where you are relative to where the storm sewer is, as far as when you can start your project?
Yeah, and Justin might want to get into this a little bit more, but I think that the change that we're looking at there is going to allow the storm sewer from the woodworking shop that we had in here a couple months ago. It's going to allow them to build their sewer a lot more cost effectively. It's not going to be as deep because it doesn't have to serve the property upstream of them. So the property upstream of them would then have a different outlet, and each of them would have to build their own storm sewer, but within the easements that we think should be secured in advance. And then however they work that out with the underlying developer, which has been the Rockford Development Group, is really between buyer and seller. I think we got thrust into a little bit of a difficult position that we talked about when we reviewed that. And we're not here to pick winners and losers. We're just here to make sure that the infrastructure is in place to support the development. How that gets done is really between them.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? If there are none, the representative of the developer, if you could step forward, name and address, and share your position.
Sure. Justin Longstreth with Moore and Brugink Engineers, representing the developer tonight. Terry, I think to answer your question, the plan revision that we have in front of you tonight maybe offers a little bit more flexibility in the development. The way that it was previously shown with a single storm sewer easement to service this kind of whole block really created a situation where the first guy in had to build a lot of the infrastructure to service all of the neighborhood, so to speak, where now that we're separating that, the development that is under construction, as I understand it, is responsible for their own. The lot to the west, which is called C9, is responsible for their own because their easements and their storm sewer are taking separate paths. They end up in the same location. There's a stormwater detention basin that has already been constructed. That's ultimately where all of this water will go. That's already in place. It's just the path between the different lots and how it gets there. So this does offer some flexibility and, to Scott's point, a little bit of construction cost advantage because we're not asking the first guy to build really deep storm sewer to service the guy upstream. So, but if there's any other questions, I'd gladly answer those.
So, I asked this question of Scott, so I'll ask it of you too. So as far as where this is at, where this draft agreement, the recommended change for tonight, no one property owner is going to necessarily be at the mercy of somebody else as far as the timing of their development of their lot.
Correct. That is
Okay.
correct. Yep. And so the entity that will be granting the easement is still RDG Walker, still the developer, and they will be granting easements to the owner of C11. And then we'll be working with the doctors who own Dream Stage, the business park, to provide easements on their property to offer or to provide storm sewer access to C9. So both RDG Walker and the doctors in Dream Stage are partners in the overall development. So
Okay, all right, thank you.
One thing to add, Chair, I apologize for not showing this earlier. This is a letter I requested of RDG Walker. When they submitted this, it's signed off by the RDG Walker manager, Todd Wilde, who is the one with the cabinet shop that came in, and then Dream Stage, which is what Justin just mentioned. So we have signatures of the owner or manager for all of those properties signing off on expressly these specific things of where storm from this one will go to this one and who has easements where, so they all know about it and are on board before it came here tonight.
Okay. Any comments, observations? It looks fairly straightforward. Sounds like it's housekeeping, but it's when you're talking about storm sewer, it's you got to do it right, and we've got the city engineer's office in agreement with the applicant's engineer that it's set up properly.
I make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Anyone here would wish to step forward and offer comment?
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Well, are we at a point where we can have a motion to be considered?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for case number 23-032, 2150 and 2000 Northridge Drive Northwest. PASP amendment. Based on the application material provided, I make a motion to approve the amendment to the preliminary area site plan for the Walkerview planned unit development at 2000 and 2150 Northridge Drive Northwest and 3180 Walkerview Drive Northwest, with changes to stormwater easements connecting lots C4, C11, C12, C13, and I4 to the detention basin in lot I5 in accordance with the plan set dated 11/30/2023. Subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact, there are no conditions attached. Findings of fact, the amendment is to a PSP as illustrated and described by the original PSP, and in this amendment continues to meet the standards contained in section 94-185, 94-187, 94-213, 94-217, and 94-218, standards for CPUDs and IPUDs of Walker zoning ordinance, and continues to meet applicable standards for review. The PSP amended herein remains in substantial compliance with the previously approved Walkerview PSP, consisting of the maps and accompanying written materials required under section 94-213 of the Walker zoning code.
Got a motion by Tyler? Support. Support by Mark. Any other conversation, discussion? Being none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, get back to the agenda. All right, next item on the agenda is progress report on the moratorium issues. And I don't know if you've had a chance to provide any background ahead of time. Thanks, Scott. For the new commissioners as far as what's at hand and then what the discussion is right now.
Sure, I'd be happy to do a quick summary. But what I prepared for tonight, I just kind of put some notes together for everyone to see here regarding the moratorium that was enacted by the City Commission in September and is valid for 6 months. The Planning Commission also made a recommendation to put the same language in the zoning ordinance for a period of 6 months, but that process took a little while, so that was effective beginning in November and ends the beginning of May of this year, 2024. The moratorium is intended to stop any new housing developments of greater than 3.5 units per acre from moving forward during this window, so that a few tasks that were already underway can be accomplished, putting everyone in the city on the same page in terms of vision and regulations to enact that vision moving forward. So the two major tasks set up within the moratorium process are the zoning ordinance rewrite that has been underway for a good time before, and then the master plan amendment process, which had been talked about and really kind of got kick-started into high gear within this time frame. So the zoning ordinance rewrite, the board is all very familiar with that as you were active in many steps. The subcommittee finished their work. They had been working for 2 years on that project, going through the major components of the ordinance and proposing revisions. There was a joint meeting held with many of the city boards that utilize the zoning ordinance. A public hearing was held by the Planning Commission and a recommendation made to the City Commission, and the City Commission will hear the first reading next Monday, and then 2 weeks later, the second reading. So that is well on track to be adopted within the time frame in the moratorium, and specifically within the moratorium, it says by March. So we're pretty good on that front there. The master plan amendment is the other component. There's a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning with staff and our planning consultant to discuss the specifics, scoping, get everything kind of with more detail than I have at this time. But the plan, now we have the first component pretty well tied off. All of the substantial work has been completed. Now we're going through the final approval process with the City Commission. So that frees up some time and bandwidth for staff and the consultant to work on the master plan amendment. Some of the potential items that have been discussed that may end up within that scope are discussion of some of the significant undeveloped. A few of them were ones that there was discussion about large multifamily, kind of leading to the moratorium. There were 4 or 5 projects at that time. Some of them were put on hold. A few of them were altered and brought back to, kind of not be caught in the net of the moratorium. So further discussion on those and other significant undeveloped lots is on the table. Road connections was another one that came up. There's a few maps in the master plan for future road connections, making sure those are what we want them to be. Another thing that came up during the joint meeting that was held regarding the zoning ordinance was the idea of holding a design review board. So that's something that can be discussed further, potentially proposed, whether that's now or in the future, and other things. So I'm happy at this time to answer any questions about the process and where we're at, but also asking for feedback from the planning commissioners who reference the master plan a lot, have some familiarity with it. We're very involved in drafting it the first time and will be involved as this process gets forward longer. But if there's any things right now that you would like to see the staff team work on and bring to the board in terms of the master plan? Are there elements that you've worked with that feel like they don't have enough information? Are there things where you would like to know more, things to tweak? Please let me know and I'll make sure that they end up within that scope.
This design review board, is that something new?
We don't currently have one in Walker. It would be a new thing if we chose to move forward.
The last time we talked, one of the things that I had kind of pushed for was, we talk about every city needs more housing, more housing, more housing. And it's not houses, it's apartments, condos. And I know we're building up our industrial streets, and pretty soon those will be pretty much filled out for Walker. I mean, there won't be that much more industrial spaces. So my question's always been, how many living spaces does Walker need to support the industrial business once it's all filled out? I mean, there's some spaces we don't know. And how much of it do we really need to be apartments? How much of it can be single-family housing based on the jobs that are coming in? I mean, these are things that I think about, and I'm sure the community does when they're saying, okay, let's put a 4-story building right on in Standale, and make it living above and then, retail below. But I don't know if that's what we want either. But again, I just want to know, what are we looking for as far as our total plan, people, jobs, and so on. Tough question, I know.
That's not one I have an answer to at the moment, but I will pass that question along to the group and we can discuss it through the process. So that's perfect.
I guess along those lines, you're asking what kind of a mix are we seeking? One way I've looked at the master plan is it's identified where the more intense developments would be taking place. And in some respects, it almost begs taking a look at the current plan and see if that gives you some inference as far as what that mix should be. My sense of why the moratorium came about, recently completed the master plan, and the projects that were coming in a lot of them were involving rental housing. And maybe at the end of it, we had this big influx of that, and then maybe over time, the lower density housing might have evened things out somewhat. And that's where I'm saying is, can we take a look at, as it is right now, what that mix might be? Now, the case is that the high density areas could be owner occupied housing or it could be rental. And as a city, we don't really outwardly have a say that it has to be, whether it's rental or owner occupied. They come in and indicate that in these. For example, River Ridge, they're coming in for rental there, and under that zoning classification, it could have been an owner occupied, but it's just that right now the market has really been pushing those that are rental, and so that's where taking a step back and just seeing what that mix might have been under the way the plan is right now, and whether that might give us some direction on what changes might be desirable.
And I think to carry on to that too, just based on city commission discussions, is we went through this whole master plan. We thought we had conveyed exactly what we wanted, but then trying to see these projects come back, we started to see like, oh, we should have clarified this further. This is not exactly what we were thinking about. And exactly to Terry's point about like, we can't tell them if they rent or buy or anything like that. And I think we have to remember too, like our younger population wants, like a lot of my friends don't even want like a yard or anything like that. Like they just like that small mixed use living situation, which is different and unique compared to what we have anywhere else in the city too.
Yeah, they can move to Grand Rapids if they want, yep.
I would agree with Elaine on that. I'm older, so I'm always a single family house, you know, big yard, all that stuff. This current generation, I don't even know what to call them anymore. They have so many different names. I mean, they value different things at work. They value time off as compared to higher wages. Their time off, you know, they value easy living apartments or condos rather than owning a house, you know.
And they want that walkability too. I can
Yeah.
just walk to the grocery store for one thing and come back. Do that like 5 times a week kind of thing.
Walk or have the groceries there and delivered to their house. My kids always have the groceries delivered. It's driving me nuts, but, so yeah. You know, along those lines, I mean, we talk about schools too. Can the schools handle a lot of these, you know, high density, apartment areas, because there's gonna be a lot of kids coming in and out of those things, and are the schools ready? I know our schools are adaptable to break walls down and keep adding on as needed. But, yeah, I mean, that's just one of those things where, you know, again, taking a look at the jobs that we have and then what type of housing we need for those jobs, you know. So like some of the college age jobs, yeah, they'll take a job for 1 or 2 years and then move on. They don't want a place to stay and get stuck with a mortgage. I get that. But some of the other factory jobs, you know, they aren't moving around as much. So they're okay with, you know.
I saw this interesting study that they say people my age tend to stay in a job for 1 to 2 years is the average over like a 10-year span, which I think that's completely different than what any other generation has had before. And that obviously is going to change your living aspect too, about moving more frequently and stuff too.
And with the internet and everything else, I mean, your job may be here, maybe in California, maybe in New York. I mean, they're bouncing around, not just from, you know, inside the city.
I've been at my job 36 years, so.
Yeah.
Oh, you're one of those guys. Gotcha.
Yeah. No.
Hey, I'm already out of the norm.
You're
I've been at-
president by now?
One of these days I'll figure out what I want to be.
I'm already out of the norm. I've already been at my job for 4 years, so that's already not normal.
But I guess that's what I was looking for, as far as just to kind of, you know, I don't want to, you know, everybody doesn't want Grand Rapids or Walker to be like a Grand Rapids where we just got these, you know, right there at Maynard and stuff. Those great big apartments are going up. I mean, I can imagine how those people complain about those big buildings there as, you know, the ones we're putting in on, you know, Lincoln Country Club, which are a lot. I mean, they're single level, nice and low. So, you know, we just, yeah, I just want to make sure we're putting together the right pieces and how many based on jobs.
Well, these are good problems. People want to live here. I moved here in '68, coming out of the Air Force with 3 kids. I bought 24 acres I'd never seen before. I'm driving down O'Brien Road and the kids are screaming. I'm wondering, what in the world did I do, you know? And of course I married a Dutch girl, which that helped. But this is a great place to live. And we stood there for a long time where how many years that went on, and all of a sudden, whammo. I mean, I used to bring my folks to centers and stuff. Then we went to Millennium Park. Now I take them out on Northridge, and they are impressed. That is an impressive place. And our forefathers, whoever was on there, did a good job with it. That's beautiful. That's a wonderful place. That's bringing people in here. So I don't know who was on before me, or maybe Elena was back then. I don't know, but somebody did a good job with that. I don't know why we can't continue to do that.
Yep, I totally agree, Joe. I just want to make sure we're not just building great big apartment complexes and half of them are empty after a certain amount of time. You know, like you said, you moved here because you bought 24 acres. Yeah, 24 acres is going to house, 1,600 people in an apartment complex. Now, I just soon have that 24 acres brought into, each gets a half-acre lot and make it a really nice development. But some of the kids can't afford that stuff. They got student loans and everything else. I get it. It's a different situation. But I just want to make sure we're looking at the numbers. That's all. I mean, and I think that's what the people of Walker want us to do, too. I mean, they keep seeing all these, multi-developments going in, and they're like, well, how many more do we need? And that's why I'm asking the city, how many more do we need? And can we say, okay, this is it. We don't need any more after these couple. I don't know.
At the last meeting, I think we had the first reading of the zoning amendments. Or was that the meeting before that?
The zoning ordinance was, the public hearing at the planning commission was at our last meeting, and it goes for 2 readings to the city commission in January.
And so it's not only this discussion about what type of housing and what's the proportion of it. A point was raised by someone in the audience as far as the proposed regulation as it defines density. And that could have a large effect on it as well. I know that's part of that subcommittee work for the zoning ordinance rewrite, but it kind of is a factor as we look at the master plan amendment too, as to how that works out when a developer looks at a piece of property, which definition are they going to use based upon the type of development, and it's important to get that right up front.
You bring up an interesting point because, and you know this better than anybody, kind of best practice in planning is that you would do a master plan and then a couple years, after that, you update your zoning ordinance to reflect the policy vision in your master plan. Well, we did that, and then now we're doing the zoning ordinance, and we're recognizing some elements of the master plan that haven't worked the way we want them to work. They're not as clear, or they're being misinterpreted, or we want to refine the vision. Are there any of those things that come to mind where, take a closer look at this section, it might need to be clarified, that have come up in the last 3 or 4 years that we've used this master plan?
That's a good question. I don't personally have an answer to that, but that may be something that we individually maybe take a look at the master plan, and it's a long document, but I think that there may be some areas where just take another look at it and see if it's clear in your mind as far as how it's expressed in the document. This gets real subjective. There's no right or wrong answer on it. It's a matter of what's the best vision going forward. And I think all the comments we've had around the table tonight are reflective of just the aspects that you have to take into account. And it's good to hear that variety expressed, because I think the plan did recognize that, and we just have to, maybe it's a fine tuning of it as much as anything else, not an overhaul.
Well, we gotta look at it. It's important we look at it as what's the best interest of the city, not what's the best interest of a developer. We don't wanna go against any developer just because we don't like them. It just has to be what's best for the city. They talk 60-40, 60% single family home, 40% rental. Where it 5347 right now, which is way higher than I thought it would be, and with what was going in, we were approaching 50%. So what is best? What is best for Walker?
What I meant to say when I was talking about letting the developer know is that, it's important that the developer understands the rules and what the expectations are. That's what I was getting at. And, the clearer that is, then theoretically, we wouldn't have as much.
Makes our job easier.
Yeah, but, easier said than done.
Was there an optimal mix in the master plan, something they were targeting initially, or are we kind of doing this after the fact, deciding how we balance multifamily, single-family owner, rental?
Well, I wasn't here when the master plan was written, so I'm sure some of the board members can speak to that more than me. I've heard that 60-40 kind of come from, that language from the mayor, from the managers, the city commission. That's kind of just been floated as like this is a good vibe for Walker, I guess I'd say. I don't know that it's written down as a goal or an kind of optimized for the city or, kind of worked with too much.
I think that that's right, Paul, is like, we were just trying to think about what would kind of fit, like Pat was saying, like our jobs and stuff like that, and the type of people we want to draw in, about having that good mixture and stuff. And 60-40 was kind of where we came into, where we still had some flexibility, but still able to maintain those single family houses a little higher and stuff, just to keep the longevity of people staying here in Walker, because that's long-term goal, obviously.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you for all of the comments. That's helpful. I will pass those along at our kind of kickoff and scoping meeting tomorrow. If other things come up, please send me emails, phone call me. I'm happy to incorporate all of that into the work being done, and I will, give periodic updates as we move forward over the next few months.
Based on the newsletter, mayor says we got lots of money, so we'll just buy land and turn it into parks like everybody wants. Just kidding.
Is there going to be a public on what you just talked about?
All of us total, or my last comments?
No. All of you total. Is there going to be room for public speaking of what you discussed as a group? I'd like to discuss.
Yeah, I was like, that's up to you, Terry, if you want to open it up for public hearing or not, public comment.
Well, in terms of the process that's been laid out, will there be that opportunity?
Within the master plan amendment process, yes, absolutely. I interpreted that question as in tonight.
Yeah, you said some things. I'm a home builder. I own a cabinet shop. I live in Walker. My shop is in Walker. You made some comments. I'd like to address that. It's not negative, it's positive. And I think you need to hear from our side what it's like to be a small builder. And we meet with a lot of young clients. They can't afford to move to Walker. And why is that? And then, so I just kind of like to address that, because I thought you had some really good comments, but I think you should hear from our side on that. It's not negative.
Yeah, in terms of order, you had your opportunity to be up front, but I think that what you're expressing tonight, I'm sensing that the board is open to listening with your perspective.
I didn't say anything up front because you didn't have that discussion up front. So the discussion brings up points of interest.
Can you just make sure you state your name and address just so we?
I'm Dave Nettie. I live at 3424 Steel Ave Northwest. My shop is at 1331 Walker Ave Southwest. So we talked about lot sizes. And one of the things about lot sizes, we talk about half acres. Young families don't want half acres. They want a quarter acre lot. They can't afford a half acre lot. We go to buy a lot today to build a house. We're spending $120,000 for a half acre lot. that takes the affordable housing or sustainable housing right out of the bracket of a young family. You know, you guys talked about industrial and the jobs that are coming in. Well, those jobs are paying $25 to $26 an hour. That's $55,000 a year. That family can't afford a $600,000 home. So when you talk about buying a home or sustainable housing, I have 4 kids that are in their 30s. So I've faced this issue. You have young families who want to live in Walker, but the planning doesn't allow for that. They can't afford those lots. They can't, if you borrow 120 grand on a lot, then the bank is requiring your house to be 4 times that price in order to meet the appraisal requirements. Now, as a young family, you're into over a $500,000 house. You're at 7% interest. You're at $4 grand a month in payments. They can't afford that. So I think sustainable housing, not affordable housing. There's a class difference there. A sustainable housing has to be looked at. A 1,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, two bath house is a great starter house, but that house today is $600,000. And why is that? Well, the land cost, the development cost. Then we pay taxes on that land. And if we build a house, then we get nailed for 1.5 times the property tax because it's not our home. We're building it to sell, so we get taxed on that, and that gets transferred down to the buyer. So the conversation is good, but there's more to it, and it's understanding those costs from a builder standpoint. I'm not a big developer. I can't go buy 100 acres and throw roads. I got to buy scattered site lots and build houses, and those lots are becoming harder and harder to find. Walker has a ton of 50-foot lots. You can build a beautiful house on a 50-foot lot. I've done it. I've taken council people to see those homes. They can't believe them. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage homes on a 50-foot lot. We can't build houses on 50-foot lots in Walker. It's not allowed. So there's things that we need to look at as a planning board to say, okay, do we want young families to come in and fill our schools and bring children in? Then we have to consider this stuff in the planning stages so that affordable housing or sustainable housing can be achieved. And you talk about apartments. I have a mother and a mother-in-law that live in Walker. My mother-in-law lives in those apartments across from Myers. $2,200 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. It's ridiculous. The more that's coming in those rentals, and why are people going to those? A lot of the young people aren't going to those because they don't want to own things. They're going to those because they can't come up with the down payment. They can't afford to own things. And so if they have a child, then they got to put the child in home care or child care during the day. And we see this all the time. We see it all the time. I'm doing jobs up in Morley. Why are we building in Morley? Real simple question. The answer is land is affordable. If the road is in, it doesn't have curbs, it has open gutters. There's a lot of things that make lots affordable. And so I would just, that's all I wanted to say. I thought the conversation was great, but I think there needs to be realistic look into what it takes to build a sustainable house for a young family and what that cost is. A septic system, an average mound septic system is $23,000. So you spend 80 grand for a lot, you throw a septic system in, now you're at $100,000. So the days of owning 24 or 25 acres, you probably bought that at 6 grand. That's $1 million today. So the choices are becoming narrower and narrower. And I live in Walker. I love Walker. But it's becoming very unaffordable to the average person. And the zoning requirements and the tax base is not understanding this. And it's not understanding even all those jobs that are coming into Walker. If you went and surveyed all the people that are coming in, I would venture a guess that 80% of them don't live in Walker. because they can't afford to live in Walker at the wage that those industries are bringing people in at. And so we're allowing these industries, we give them tax breaks, and the residents or the workers don't even live in our community. So that's all I wanted to say. I thought it was a great conversation. I just think there's another side of it that in the planning stages has to be considered. It has to be considered for the younger folks so they can afford to live here and build here and have a career here. That's all I want to say. Thank you for allowing me to say that.
Well, thank you. You've raised some good points. It's very practical considerations for that.
If you guys ever have any questions, you're welcome to my shop. But you changed the zoning on my shop, so now I have to move. So there's a whole nother fiasco. So we're dealing with it. But be open to young businesses, small businesses, and young families. And with all the commercial that's going on, we've just lost sight of what it takes to be a small businessman and survive, and what it takes for a young family to buy a home and live in our community.
He does bring up a point that I thought of before, was how many people do work in Walker and don't live in Walker, and or do live in Walker, and see what percentages we have there. I agree that, you know, you want to build developments that people can live in and not have to get an apartment. I mean, is it a smaller lot with a smaller house? But we also want to entertain the little bit larger ones for the people that do want to stay, like, okay, now they've been here 40 years, now they want to upgrade to the last retirement home, blah, blah, blah. And it's a little bit bigger than everybody else can afford, but they can afford it. So you want to have all those options available.
I agree, but we see more and more of those houses than we see the other end of the houses. And those subdivisions are there. We have a ton of scattered lots in Walker, but you can't build on them because of zoning requirements. And those are the affordable lots. I mean, we bought lots 2-3 years ago for $40,000-$50,000. You can't touch a lot today for $80,000-$90,000. Then you gotta put a septic in. And it just keeps raising the cost to young families, but it's a great discussion.
I can give a quick follow-up to Pat's question, just as a quick search. The US Census Bureau has a tool called On the Map, where you can do kind of spatial analysis. And they have an inflow-outflow quick thing. So I just pulled up approximately, this is with 2021 data, around 23,600 people were employed in Walker, 10,500 people lived in Walker, and 1,200 people both lived and worked in Walker. So lots of people come in. Most of the people who live here leave for their jobs in other areas of the metro area, and then there's only a small percentage.
Say those statistics
Sure.
again, please.
It's 23,622 people came into Walker for their job on a regular basis. 10,544 people left Walker, live here but have their job elsewhere, and 1,297 people both lived and worked within the boundaries of Walker. And I can print this off and send it to you.
So what's the total population of Walker?
This is about employment, so it's not total population.
I was just curious what you gave the workers, where they go, but I was just curious how many people live in Walker?
It's like 25.
25, yeah?
Yeah, I heard 27.
It's like 25, something.
Okay.
I'll try to look.
I was just curious.
You know, I hear a lot of, you know, that there's an issue out there of affordable housing, and I don't disagree with that, but it's just kind of an observation, is all the projects that we've had come to us, not one factory owner or whatever has come to us and said, I can't get help because I don't have affordable housing. I mean, it's an issue that we talk about, but I don't know that it's forefront in the employment sector of, and maybe Tyler, you work for a bigger company than I do, so.
I haven't heard anything about the housing through our employees. I'm one of the few that live in Walker and work in Walker. And when I bought my house for 25 years ago, I can make a lot of money on it now. And I'm just being honest.
Well, our kids aren't gonna be able to live where we live now. I mean, I don't know what they expect, the younger generation, but some of them think they're gonna live in my house or something. I don't think that's realistic at all.
One thing I heard you guys had mentioned in a previous meeting, that I had heard mention the master plan, but
Can you come up to the microphone, please, and state your name and address?
Mike Vanderklock at 410 Dakota Drive. I'd heard in one of the previous planning meetings, which has been great coming to these things, I learn a lot. But somebody had mentioned the concept of repurposing, and I don't know if that's something to bring up in the discussion. I mean, you look at, you know, there's been a lot of development of large big box stores in the city of Walker, and that way of purchasing is now going away. And you've got a lot of vacant properties, and I think it would be a good thing to include in your discussions of, is there an opportunity for city fully developed properties from commercial into more of that residential? The residential is there, more of the people living on top of each other, it's walkable, all the infrastructure is there. That it might be an opportunity for the city of Walker.
Thank you. Good discussion. And again, given this timetable that we've got before us, it wouldn't hurt if we each take some time and take a look at the master plan text, kind of reacquaint ourselves with it, and see if there's something that'll jump out in terms of the conversation we had this evening. All right, you got some feedback for you.
Nope, yes,
Thank
that
you.
was wonderful, thank you.
Last item on the agenda are election of officers. We have chair, vice chair, and secretary. Currently, I serve as chair, Tyler is vice chair, and Pat is secretary. This is an opportunity, if you have an interest in serving in one of those positions, to step up and volunteer to serve in that capacity.
I have no desire to do any of that, but I think our three guys have done a pretty good job so far. We get people to talk a little bit too long. He's got the 3-minute warning there, and I think that's appropriate. But no, I think that you guys have done a good job. I have no reason to change.
Anybody that wants to step forward or offer? Well, you're willing to?
Sure.
Pat?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, we look for a motion to,
I'll make a motion to appoint Terry as chair, Tyler as vice chair, and Pat as secretary.
Second.
motion by Elena, supported by Scott, to go with the current group of people. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Anything about our next meeting that you wanted to share?
Sure, there are two things on the agenda for our meeting in 2 weeks, which is January 17th. We have an FASP amendment for the Come and Go gas station that was approved earlier this year at Leonard and Wilson. Come and Go was purchased by Maverick, which is a new gas station chain that hasn't really come to our area too much yet, but their corporate identity is a little different, so they want to make some changes to the layout. It doesn't look like real significant, but it's beyond what I could approve. We'll come back, we will do that first on the agenda, and then we have the River Ridge PASP coming back for that to take it off the table and discuss it again.
Okay.
With the purchases, that mean we get a change in name?
I believe, I don't know at this point in time, all of the documents that they sent me say Come and Go / Maverick. So I'm not sure if they know yet which ones will go with the new branding.
There's 3 brand new ones on 52nd Street. I drive past when I go from one steel case to another. It's like boom, boom, boom. 3 brand new ones, all within the last year. They look nice. They're really nice looking gas stations and
Yeah, they're nice
convenience
gas
store.
stations.
All right. Thank you.
Introduction to the new,
Yeah.
I get to make a motion to close the meeting?
And that is Pat Nolan.
Yes. Pat Nolan, I was on the zoning board for 9 years.
yeah, I remember seeing you there once or twice.
So, does it, Tom Lyle officially retired? Is this first name Tom?
Yep, so Tom's term on the planning commission expired at the end of last calendar year. So I know the mayor, our former ZBA member, is looking to also join the planning commission. So we should be at full strength of 9 members. And that should also help when life happens and people need to miss a meeting or two, that hopefully we have quorum and can keep doing business for the folks that come to Walker.
Did we vote on a pay raise yet or not?
And we've got Elena, city commissioner, who's coming back to the planning commission here, so she brings a lot of good experience, both in terms of service of the public and as a elected official, but also in your job still with MDOT, right?
Oh, you're with them, Doc, that's right. Fix Wilson.
I don't do the budget. I just do construction. You can just blame me for all the construction projects this summer, like the ramps closing at Alpine and stuff, that's my job. So you can just blame me for that all summer, so.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to close the meeting. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried.
Aye.